This time on the Vital Veda podcast.
Somebody was unable to conceive, got the gemstone, and then was pregnant within a matter of weeks or months. Usually we would consider that a testament to the good karma brought on by the gemstones. Time and time again, almost everybody that I work with in person is startled at how tangible the energy is in these stones.
Welcome to the Vital Veda show. I am your host, Dylan Smith. I'm an Ayurveda practitioner, holistic health educator, and a being of light, full of different light frequencies and correlating various elements and elemental constituents, part of the periodic table, which is all correlated with gemstones, our topic for today. And my guest today is someone that I would describe as a true gem geek. And I mean that in the best possible way. If you've seen her photo, you'll know exactly what I mean. The glasses, the stones everywhere. This is a woman who lives and breathes gemstones. Tiffany April Rains is a Vedic Gemologist and co-owner of Astrological Gem International, one of the most experienced and highest quality, rare, precious gemstone companies in the world. Tiffany's not just about sourcing and selling. She's also a Jyotiṣī. She's a practitioner of Vedic Astrology. She has nearly 2 decades of experience, which means she approaches gemstones through a very precise chart-based lens, the right stone for the right person at the right time. Tiffany deeply committed to safety and tracking real-world outcomes. This is rigorous research based. Not many gem sellers will track how the client is going after the purchase and the results they're feeling. But what I find particularly compelling about Tiffany is that she goes into the field herself. She tests gemstones on her own body, both conventional stones and also those not typically prescribed for certain planets in Jyotish. She's actively expanding the map of what is possible in Vedic gemstone therapy. We also had the pleasure of interviewing her business partner, Jay Boyle, on the podcast episode 28 of the Vital Veda podcast, way back. And at that time, we described Jay as being the single number one most experienced gemstone buyer in the world, having purchased over $1 billion worth of precious gemstones. So, Tiffany, I have to ask you straight up, is that still the case? Would you consider Jay the most experienced gemstone buyer in the world?
I would say so. Jay is legendary. So even though he's mostly retired now, he has more experience than pretty much anybody in the world buying all sorts of gems. So I am quite blessed to have learned from essentially a master on how to buy gems, how to identify the very best. And because he had decades of this incredible buying power, he very carefully selected the very best possible gems of the very best for astrological and healing purposes. So that's how Astrological Gem, the business that I'm the CEO of, was born, through Jay founding it and sourcing only the very, very best gems for this, kind of as his passion project. So we've always been kind of a small business, and we've stayed small because the gemstones that we carry are so rare that there's only so many really in the world that are available. So that's our specialty. And I came in kind of as a skeptic, actually, originally, very curious about these gems, but didn't entirely understand how they worked. There was no quality control for the astrological prescription side of it at the time. Jay was the master at sourcing the very best, but there was so much additional information and context and method of recommendation to study and become an expert in. So that's essentially what I have done the past 20 years. And as you mentioned, I've tested every possible thing on myself to see exactly what it does, and on my friends and on my family. And I always ask our clients to let us know what the gemstones do for them over time. So I have people contacting me years down the road with success stories of how gems have changed their lives for the better. So I would consider us a research hub or knowledge base more than anything. And even though I do help connect people to their ideal gems, I really consider myself an advisor more than a salesperson per se, because the knowledge to me is really more important than anything, and that's what I'm most excited to share.
I love it. Can you share a story or two or few where a gemstone prescription produced a result that made you light up like a gemstone catching the sun, or something that like surprised you that, wow, that's a very direct correlation that I can see very clearly from this gemstone?
Sure. Yeah, that's a really wonderful question. And we've had many really fun, direct stories. I always play this little game called What Are the Odds? Because a lot of people say, Hey, I got this gem and then I just got my dream job, or, this wonderful thing happened. And then they say, I'm not sure if it's the gem, but it happened the same week that I put the gem on. So for me, it's what are the odds? Like, what is the likelihood that this thing came together right when you first put on this gem? But I think some of the most wonderful stories are people who, for example, struggled to have children. We've had multiple clients that weren't able to have kids. As soon as they put on a gem, we like to prescribe a gem for the fifth house ruler in astrology. That's the house that rules over children. So you activate that good luck, and it can just bring about this. So that would be an example of what are the odds. If somebody was unable to conceive, got the gemstone, and then was pregnant within a matter of weeks or months, usually we would consider that a testament to the good karma brought on by the gemstones. Um, I have had plenty of stories, even with my family. My father was struggling after a divorce with his second wife. She had left him in this big house all to himself in a very slow small town real estate market, and he let me put a pearl on, which is the ruler of his fourth house, which is home, happiness, inner peace, real estate. And within a week, he had three offers on that
Wow.
house, more than he was asking for. Um, was able to make an incredible return on that real estate investment and move on, and is very happy where he is now. So that's always fun, especially when it's like somebody who may be a skeptic, like my own family member, who, especially a man who might not want to wear a pearl for the stigma, the fashion stigma, who reluctantly put it on and then immediately had results. I think that some of my favorite is when, for example, somebody's parents get the gemstone for a skeptical son in college or something, and has this turnaround. Whenever there's skepticism, it's an indicator to me that it's not a placebo effect,
Mm.
and that's always my favorite,
Yeah,
when it works despite a belief system. That's how we really know that this is effective.
totally resonate with that. I'd love to go back, unpack the fifth house and fertility, because I mean, fertility is probably the number one thing we work with in our clinic. So you're saying the fifth house rules children, and the planet that strengthens that house, you would get a gem for them. So
In
that
a
could
lot
be
of
different.
cases,
You're right. Because some
yes,
cases, if that planet is, you don't want to strengthen for some reason because it might be causing
yes.
ill effect, you wouldn't prescribe that gemstone, right?
Yes, there's a couple different approaches. There's really not a hard and fast rule for every rising sign. But say, for example, you were working with a Scorpio ascendant where Jupiter, which has a lot to do with children karma and husband karma, maybe for a woman, also rules over her second house, which has to do with family karma, and her fifth house. So when you have all of these indicators that strengthening Jupiter would help with family, progeny, children, that would be a great example. Scorpio ascendants also do great with pearls, and pearl relates to fertility and maternity and being a mother. So that would be another option. But then you've got cases like a Virgo ascendant where Saturn rules over the fifth house. That would be a no for me. That causes delays. That does not, it's kind of the opposite of what you're going for. So that's where it's really case by case. We don't necessarily want to do a hard and fast rule. There's always a lot of holistic things, but sometimes it's really a clear yes for a particular goal. This is why it's so important to speak to a qualified Vedic gemologist to recommend the gems, so all of
Yeah.
that context and nuance can be taken into
Right.
consideration.
Awesome. And I'm going to get into pearls because there's so many different types of pearls, what actually pearls
Yeah.
make that effect. And we did speak about with Jay on the podcast a few years ago about Saturn stones and how it's generally rarely given. But before we go into that, you mentioned that in Astrological Gem, your company, you deal with very rare stones. So I kind of want to peel it back now, basics for people who are new to Vedic gemology. And what's the difference between you guys, for example, and the top of the market gemstone local, dealer who are just dealing it for fashion? What makes a astrological gem an astrological gem?
It's such a good question. And if any of your listeners are curious, astrologicalgemblog.com. We've got a lot of articles on this and photographs that can show the difference in quality, but quality is the primary criteria. A gemstone needs to have a very high degree of flawlessness to transmit these planetary frequencies effectively. When you've got significant inclusions, it distorts the flow of energy that comes through the gem. Inclusions can be anything from little speckles of carbon or some other mineral that had grown in the stone. It can be cracks or flaws, or so we want to avoid that. Another really important factor is treatment. So, a vast majority of the sapphires, for example, on the commercial market, or like you said, in a jewelry store, have been heat treated. And when you heat treat a sapphire, you're almost taking it to its melting point, about 1700 degrees Fahrenheit. If your listeners are Celsius temperature people, you'll have to Google that. I apologize. But it's very hot. And you're basically destroying the spirit of the stone when you alter it in that way. So, in a very rare chance that you go to a fine jewelry store who happens to have highly flawless, untreated sapphires, there's going to be an incredible markup, a retail markup, because they're so rare. So, another big part of what we do is we are always hunting for gems that are this really high degree of flawlessness, untreated. At below wholesale prices. And this is where it gets really hard. It's another reason that our company is so small, because our goal is to be able to get these incredibly rare gems. They're a huge investment, but still make them affordable as possible to the people that find us and want this technology on their body. So we're basically wholesaling them, at a minimal markup. And we live in a small town. Cost of living is not bad. We don't have $20,000 a month rent to cover, so we find them and we get them to the people that need them. I think, I'm really grateful that Jay Boyle, the owner of the company, and I are on the same page, that we do this for the benefit of humanity more than the profit margin. So we're very flexible. We work with people, whatever they need, we do our best to get it for them.
Oh, I so appreciate that because I've been, recommending your gems for a while, and because it's kind of the only one I can trust. Essentially, it's the truth, and there's many people who feel the same way. And a lot of people
Thank you.
complain astrological gem is so expensive because they're comparing to for sellers in India and
Yes.
people who are charging. And I'm like, you just look at the quality. I mean, it says it all. And
You can see it. There's a
share.
visible difference,
Mm.
especially in high resolution or highly magnified photos. That is a really helpful way to compare. Sometimes to the naked eye, it's not quite as obvious, but you can definitely see the difference often, even to the naked eye. The degree of flawlessness in a proper astrological gem, it has a completely different look to it. If you are able to feel them out in person, it has a completely different energetic feel as well.
Right.
And even though there's only so many people that I work with in person, the majority of the people I work with, it's online. When somebody can come in, especially if they've bought a gem for healing purposes in India, as you mentioned, something that's very poor quality, and then they come in and they feel what a true astrological gem feels like, time and time again, almost everybody that I work with in person is startled at how tangible the energy is in these stones. I mean, they're really alive. Jay often uses the word sattva, the sattvic qualities of the stone. Its life force is considerably more powerful than these poorer quality gems.
Another fundamental that I would love to just peel back because it will give more context of how actually does a gemstone create a therapeutic effect. And I'll share kind of what my perspective is, and you can add, or I'd love to hear yours. And that it's primarily it's through light, the science of light. I mean, Jyotish, Jyoti means light, so it's the light from the sun and probably from the other planets, but correlates with that color as well as the composition of the actual stone and goes through, in most cases, the ring, or I mean the finger, onto the finger and creates effect. And I feel the hands, in Ayurveda, the hands are very powerful. I mean, Hastavasi means the healing hand. Like the hand has the ability to heal because it's the motor organ of the sense of touch. And the sense of touch, the Sparsha Indriya, is the king of the senses known in Ayurveda. It's the king, it's the biggest sense. it's vata, it's vayu, it's the grossest element. So through the hands, and in this case the fingers, if you interact through light energy and also material composition of certain elements and constituents that I I think I've heard are similar to what the actual planets hold, then you get an effect of these big grahas, these big sources of light and masses of energy that are in our universe. So I'd love to hear your
Yeah.
take on that.
Yeah, that's well put. I really love the term celestial body
Mm,
because it really is these celestial bodies out here. And somehow these planets, these celestial bodies, do possess their own unique form of consciousness and these timeless values that can be channeled through the human experience: love, abundance, communication. These are these like cosmic, probably universal principles. And for some reason, these celestial bodies represent and signify and possibly even channel or transmit some of these particular qualities. So you have these cosmic rays of light that come from the celestial bodies. And it just so happens that there are a few precious gemstones formed by planet Earth that have rays of color that resonate with the frequencies from the celestial bodies. So a yellow sapphire happens to have similar color rays to the cosmic rays of Jupiter. So when you wear it on your body, it amplifies the natural qualities of Jupiter, like abundance and spiritual growth and expansion and joy and creativity. And then, Saturn, we were briefly touching on this. Saturn is kind of the opposite. It's constriction and patience and discipline and structure. It's a very cold planet. And blue sapphire activates Saturn, and it has a very different effect on people than a Jupiter stone, which is warm and expansive. So, it's really important if somebody is going to strengthen a planet like Saturn to be really clear on the intentions for it. It's not necessarily always harmful, but it does expect us to really be on point, to be disciplined, to be deeply self aware, to be deeply in integrity. If anybody is off of that, these Saturn stones will, dare I say, impose consequence to make sure that you get back on track. So, a lot of people fear Saturn for the qualities that it represents, but these are truly important qualities of humanity: consistency, integrity, patience, dedication. But in most cases, it makes more sense, in my opinion, to practice those just through daily rituals rather than investing in this gemstone to
right.
remind you constantly of how you should be. So it's a tougher medicine. So that one I definitely recommend very sparingly.
Hmm.
But hopefully that explains it a little bit. We're essentially channeling these various qualities of the human experience as they are connected to the cosmic rays in our solar system through the gemstones that we wear. And like you mentioned, having them on the hands is very powerful. The various fingers do correspond to the various planets, but you can also wear gemstones as pendants. I like to wear bigger gems over my heart chakra. I think that the heart circulates so much, it can also circulate the energy of gems. So that's another really wonderful place to wear them.
If you would like to deepen your knowledge of the intertwining correlations of Ayurveda and Jyotish, we have recently launched a series of videos that trains you in correlating the seven dhatus, the seven body tissues, a key component of Ayurveda anatomy and physiology, with the 9 planets of Jyotish, Vedic Astrology. This is a course taught by me and my teacher, Vaidya Harsha Raju, who is uniquely both an Ayurvedic doctor, a Vaidya, as well as a Jyotiṣī. And we correlate this fundamental aspect, which is in Ayurveda, we have the Traya Upastambha, which are the 3 pillars of health. And they are number 1, doshas, vata, pitta, kapha. You probably heard about that. Number 2, the malas, the 3 waste products: sweat, urine, and feces. And the other pillar, the third pillar, is these 7 dhatus, the 7 tissues, and that correlates with the 9 planets in Jyotish. So if you are interested in diving into that, it is an advanced course. You need to have either prerequisite knowledge of the foundations of Ayurveda, or if you have prerequisite knowledge of Jyotish, this course is for you. This is a set of videos which you do in your own pace. You have unlimited access to this for your life. It is an incredible, profound course, which when it was recorded in 2020, it was well ahead of its time. And it's literally taken 6 years for the collective consciousness to be ready to receive this course. It's been in the back of my mind that I'm going to be releasing this one day because it was so profound, but it wasn't there yet. And finally, it is there. Check out vitalveda.com.au/courses, and you'll see the 7 dhatus and 9 planets. So you mentioned color being a big component. You said yellow sapphire for Jupiter. People also wear yellow clothes for Jupiter energy, especially on the Jupiter day, which is the Thursday. So what is it, a different type of color that the stone embodies? Because also all the stones are different colors. You can get the more darker yellow, you can get more of a light yellow. So what's the difference of the color in terms of the color frequency being transmitted to the body? What's the difference of that color coming from a stone rather than a cloth?
It's a really interesting question, and a lot of people do wear the corresponding color in their clothing on the particular day of the week. Astrologers will tell you, if red stones are good for you, buy a red car, don't buy a blue car if Saturn's not good for you. So there is some subtlety there. I think a lot of it has to do with color transmission. So an opaque article of clothing is going to be a lot different than a gemstone, which kind of acts like a laser. So it absorbs light, it's cut to a point, so the beam of light and color comes through the bottom. Its interaction with light and frequency is a little bit
Right.
different than something like an article of clothing. But I do think subtly there is, at the very least, a degree of intention when you're surrounding yourself with particular colors. But I will tell you, I break that rule all the time. I wear tons of blue, I wear tons of black, and I absolutely have to shy away from blue sapphires, which I have tested on multiple occasions and confirmed that's a dangerous gem for me. And I wear almost no yellow clothing, even though yellow sapphire is my primary gem. But maybe I can get away with more because I have so many yellow gemstones. I can cheat a little bit with my wardrobe.
Can you show us your hands again? What you got?
I'm also a gardener, so my fingernails are disgusting
Oh,
for those
wow.
of you who are
Okay.
viewing this. But yeah, so I've got a 9 carat yellow sapphire here, a 4 carat here. This is a yellow topaz. So you were touching on something that's interesting. There's all of these different spectrums, even within yellow. There's lemon yellow, golden yellow, and the range there can all be effective to strengthen Jupiter if you shy too far off and get into orangey yellow or greenish yellow. You start kind of getting off track a little bit. But to me, the more lemon yellow tones activate kind of the more spiritual, ethereal side of Jupiter, and the more golden yellow, like you see in a yellow topaz, activates the more embodied side of Jupiter, physical health, physical wealth, abundance in the material world. So I tend to wear both, and I have noticed that they target different significations in my own life. So I'm able to track that.
Beautiful.
Mm.
So you mentioned a stone being flawless is a very big difference and importance. If that's just inclusions, could us as the general punter, we call it in Australia, could we just get a magnifying glass and see those flaws, those incisions or inclusions? Is it that easy to tell? Because I had the assumption that it's not easy to read gemstones. Like you have to be quite well qualified. Diamonds are pretty easy; you can learn it, but the rest is, yeah,
It takes so much experience. Jay always says that it took him decades before he felt comfortable buying emeralds for
right.
astrology. Emeralds, in particular, always have some form of inclusions due to how they're formed in the earth. So it's virtually impossible to get a technically flawless emerald. So it is very important, if you are looking at them under a magnifying glass, to understand the context of the inclusions that you're looking at. Some are passable if light can come through a particular inclusion. It's possible that it's acceptable because it's not going to distort it, but there's context within that. And especially with emeralds, so many of these little tiny fractures inside of them can grow to the surface of the stone. So you have to avoid that. And it
Wow.
really requires a lot of scrutiny, a lot of analysis to understand exactly what these inclusions are doing and if they are going to prohibit the gem from working properly. And also, prohibit it from being a stable stone. Something like emerald, it's real easy to crack it when you're setting it in jewelry. They can even be incredibly temperature sensitive. So having a stable emerald is just as important. So I would say in most cases, with most gemstones, it's really important to have somebody who knows exactly what they're doing. If you were going to look at something maybe a little more common, like an amethyst, which in a lot of cases is going to be flawless in gem quality anyway, it's very easy to find that. Yes, you could look at it with a magnifying glass and confirm that it's suitable. So it really
Mm,
just depends on your level of investment. If you're
right.
an amethyst, for those who don't know, would be considered a secondary stone to something like blue sapphire. So the primary gemstones are the biggest investment. They're also the most powerful. But we do have substitute stones like citrine or peridot or amethyst that are a lot more accessible for people. And if somebody wants to go with that, the quality rules still apply to make sure that it works for astrology. But in this case, there's also a variable of size. So if somebody's going with a weaker stone, because it's not as concentrated, it should be significantly larger, at least 8 to 10 carats, usually set into a pendant at that
Mm,
size. Whereas a precious primary gemstone like yellow sapphire or emerald can be small, even as small as
right.
1 to 2 carats, and still have noticeable effect for people.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is mentioned in the Shastras, I believe, like the classical text, that there are these nine ratnas, which are the nine main stones, and then these uparatnas, which are the secondary stones, which are common today because it's more affordable. So definitely something to consider and favor quality and also favor quality over size. Especially, and we spoke about this in the podcast with Jay a lot. Like in India, it's such a thing. You have to have this amount of carat to achieve the result, but this is very limited.
Almost anybody that's gotten a reading, especially in India or with Indian astrologers, will probably have left that reading with a recommendation for a stone of a particular size. And it's usually a very large size, like 5 carats, 7 carats. And as you mentioned, people will come to our website and be like, "Oh, these are way too expensive. I can't afford a 5 carat, emerald for $40,000." But it's just not necessary when the stone is of a highly flawless quality. So I think that these sizes are kind of an arbitrary recommendation where a lot of this knowledge has been kind of convoluted over the years. It's part of the culture. Another thing you get a lot is astrologers recommending gemstones based on a person's body weight. So I get these emails all the time. I weigh 75 kilos. What size sapphire do I need? But we are not ingesting these gemstones, hopefully. They're working on our energy body a lot more so than our physical body, the way that like a supplement or an herb would. And I have met plenty of very energetically sensitive large people, and I've met tiny people that are not so energetically sensitive. So body weight is not a critical aspect, in my opinion, at all of the recommendation for a gem size.
Ha- you have a lot of Indian clients, right? Is that right?
Yes. Mhm.
Because from my experience, a lot of Indians don't want, like, they don't want to pay a lot because they're used to their cheap prices.
Yeah.
So how has that been for you in your over the years? Have they come to the table and realized
Yes.
about quality, or are they just, or a lot of
Yes.
them go away?
Both.
Okay.
Both. Yeah. There are a lot of people that I speak to briefly that have so much cultural embedded belief, if that makes sense, that I'm not going to be able to crack it very quickly. But then there's a lot of other people, especially Indians, who have come to America, have very lucrative careers, that have taken the time to start doing research on this a little bit deeper rather than just the kind of superstitions and beliefs they were raised with. And we have so much information on the blog. We are constantly explaining to people the critical importance of quality and how that relates to effectiveness. So, fortunately, at this point, a lot of people who have taken the time to do research come to me with education that they have given themselves, so I don't have to start from square one.
Nice.
But yes, the people that are open to it, that are from India, often have been wearing lower quality gems, really not noticed much from it or noticed a little bit from it. And some higher intuitive sense compels them to hop online and start Googling and start researching. And then they find us. And then when they upgrade their gem to something that's the proper quality, are really impressed by the results that they get.
Mm.
And I think, what's really fun is that I have this reoccurring experience with people that it's almost like their higher self guides
Mm.
them to these
Beautiful.
gemstones. Yeah, so they call it an intuitive hit, but it's like
Nice.
you can tell that the higher self is leading
Yeah,
them to
I
this, and
agree.
that's part of what the gems do, in my opinion, is enliven that higher state within us. So that's kind of where we operate from more routinely when we have the
Mm.
gemstones on.
Love that. There's this perspective that I hold, Tiffany, and I'm wondering your take on it. And it's from my experience, and mainly from my experience seeing other people. And it's that gemstones carry even like more of a risk of distortion than most other Jyotish remedies. So their power, it's their power that's so powerful and precise that makes them less forgiving, perhaps.
Mhm.
We spoke about it with Jay. I even interviewed different people of having good effects, but also bad effects. Like I've seen a lot of people put on a gem and have an ill effect happening. So
Yes.
that's why I've
Yes.
had a lot of caution with it. And also, there's
Mhm.
this thing which I've kind of learnt in the field of Jyotish is that we don't really want the gemstone to be a primary upaya or a primary remedy, perhaps. Maybe that's wrong, just that's just a dogma because it's expensive or what, or it can become materialistic for some people. But yeah, I'm
Mhm.
curious on that caution that we need to take
Yeah.
and yeah, the
Yeah.
level of upayas.
I really appreciate you bringing this up. I would consider gemstones, I often refer to them as like a little jetpack. It's like you have this really intense momentum behind them, and it's really important that you know how to steer that and move it in the right direction, because when you have this really intense energy, this really intense karmic tool, it's so important to be aware of the karma that you are moving. So some of the other remedies, they're a little bit more gentle and they require a little bit more conscious intention, conscious steering. You're really in the driver's seat. You can be in the driver's seat with an astrological gemstone, and I think you should be. But that requires being crystal clear on why you're wearing the gemstone, what it's going to do for your particular chart, and what the potential side effects might be. You're essentially highlighting a few key things in your chart: the house that a gemstone rules over, the gemstone planet. So we were talking about the fifth house of children, but also where the planet is placed in your chart. If it's placed in the seventh house of relationships, it's going to highlight, it's going to throw a little jetpack on your relationship karma for you to sort out. And I'm of the belief, if the gemstone is properly prescribed, its job is to lead you to the best possible karmic outcome in this lifetime for whatever it signifies. But sometimes when it comes to a best possible karmic outcome, there is a lot of clearance that has to happen for us to get to that outcome. There's a lot of beliefs that we're going to have to unlearn, that we might be unconsciously sabotaging ourselves in our daily lives, prohibiting us from getting to this outcome. And the gems are going to bring up opportunity after opportunity for us to get in alignment with our goals. And sometimes that's not comfortable. And it also requires a massive amount of self awareness and accountability. I have spoken to several people over the years I have declined to work with further because they come to me, instead of having a very clear intention of what they want in their lives, they come to me with complaints and blame. My husband's terrible, my boss is terrible, and I can tell that the awareness is not going inward. And so a gemstone is not going to have the intended outcome. A gemstone's not going to fix somebody's husband. It's not going to fix their boss. It's going to help us be in a greater, bigger, clearer state so that we can be in higher relationship with everybody around us. So, the level of responsibility required to navigate this is not for everyone. So it's not necessarily gentle. In my opinion, like you've mentioned, is it a primary remedy? It can be, but we really have to be um, incredibly clear to work with it in that way.
Mm, beautiful. There's these phases as well of when you get called for a gem. I remember when I bought an emerald from you, it must have been over 10 years ago, which I don't wear now for other reasons. Maybe we can discuss privately. But
Sure.
after that, I just was so into jewelry. I wanted another diamond. I was buying gold chain, gold bracelet. And now I'm like minimal, like I don't wear much. Um, so I
Mhm.
don't know. I found perhaps thought this was that didn't just happen after the emerald. It actually happened a bit later when I had a Venus Antaradasha. So when Venus came into my life a bit more. So I felt that it correlated with Venus. But I don't know, would you speak about the calling? Because I see a lot of
Mhm.
people who are new to Jyotish, they'll have their first reading, and one of the favorite questions and exciting questions is, what gem for me? It's like, oh yeah, now I get a reason to buy a gemstone. So I'd love to talk about this energy of like this pull to buy a gem.
Yeah.
And
And you bring up a great point, the phases. And we do find in a lot of cases that the transits or the planetary periods, otherwise known as Mahadashas, that people are going through does impact their interest in gems. Because sometimes people just need that additional karmic push to achieve their goals or to move through something. And even though technically we do our best to recommend gems that will be beneficial for life because they are such a big investment, you may find that you achieve the goal or the lesson very rapidly. And I often feel that gems are not necessary. It's not a requirement for everybody to wear them. It's a huge monumental blessing. It's basically a really efficient way to move through a full lifetime or lifetimes of karma very quickly. So some people might just find that I don't want to say burn out on it, but it feels that whatever their pull become satisfied, especially if they're doing other remedial work in their lives, very dedicated to spirituality, uh, growth, inner awareness. It might not be necessary. So, like you said, the emerald may have had some specific karmic or medicinal effects that resonated with you in the beginning, and then you moved on from it. And that's absolutely okay. I have tons of gems that I have retired and definitely go through different phases with different combinations depending on what I need. For me, my yellow sapphires are a daily 24/7, all the time thing for the past 20 years. But the red gems, which have various effects of empowerment, energy, intensity, I really have to dose them depending on what I'm going through because too much intensity can translate to irritation for me. Healthy irritation will get me to make very important changes in my life, but other times I need a little bit more of a pacifying quality, so I take them off. So, anybody that says to you, and this is very common, that you must wear a gemstone 24/7 to get the benefits and you have to wear it for the rest of your life is definitely missing context because we're all different and we're all on different phases of growth in our lives and we do have choice over how quickly we grow and evolve.
mm,
So, definitely listen to your physiology when you're wearing a gemstone. And you also might find if you take it off for a little bit that you want to put it back on again in a couple of months. Maybe the transits changed during your new planetary cycle, and suddenly that additional energetic influence becomes beneficial again.
just quickly on this topic, for those who are going to maybe take them off, put them on short term, what's your perspective on reusing gems or using gems that someone else has? When we spoke with Jay, we kind of talked about coral and pearl being more absorbent, so that maybe those you don't necessarily want to wear from that someone else has worn, or it wants to be more purified. But I mean, it's quite unsustainable if we just say every gem that you're going to wear has to be brand new.
Totally. And if you think about the fact that most gems took hundreds of millions of years to form within the earth, the fact that somebody wore it for a couple of years is not really a very big deal to that gem.
Yes.
But there are ways to reset it. You can completely recut it it kind of gives it a brand new spirit. And
Mm.
there are ways to clear it energetically with enough salt water, and there are ways to purify it. I often see older people pass down their gemstones. So I do a lot of double checking charts to make sure somebody's daughter or niece or grandson can inherit the gems. So we do that safely, and it's absolutely fine. In a particular case like that, especially if you know somebody and you're comfortable with them, I don't see any harm in it.
Especially
Um,
family. Especially family.
Especially
Yeah.
family.
Share
Exactly.
the karma.
Um, yes, we do our best. We don't really like to take gemstones back and resell them because of that stigma, but now and then it's very clear, especially I'm very energetically and intuitively sensitive with the gems. And a lot of times it's very clear that there are these dual dharma gemstones. They had a person and they've come back and we recut it. It's a whole new stone and it's ready for its new person. And then the new person comes and it's a great match again for them. And we're transparent about that if it happens. We make sure everybody understands. We're really careful not to kind of cross contaminate energetic history, if that makes sense. So we handle this very delicately. There have been an occasional time I did have like a blue sapphire that we bought back that was from a person who had passed away, and that particular gem carried the weight of whatever that person had gone through. We recut it, we purified it, we got blessings done at the Vedic temple. And I just told Jay, like, this stone, it's still heavy. Like, I'm not clearing the previous person. Maybe because now they're on the other side, there's a different relationship. So in that particular case, we just liquidated it to a wholesaler. Because in that case, there's not this conscious, intentional use of the stone, and we felt
Right.
really comfortable with that. So we're incredibly mindful about this. And
Mm.
as you mentioned, pearl and coral are porous. So
Right.
they absorb the energy of their wearers. They also absorb the body oils and lotions and potions, that people put on themselves. So in almost all cases, coral and pearl should be retired permanently once somebody is done with them.
Mhm. By the way, if you are interested in acquiring an emerald gemstone for your Mercury, or if you've been prescribed it or drawn to it, I'm actually selling my emerald. This is a dark green, potent 2.77 carat emerald, which I got from Tiffany some time ago, and it has been through some incredible yagis and pujas. If you are interested in acquiring that, it is one of the higher range, higher qualities of that astrological gem offers. Contact info@vitalveda.com.au, and I would love to pass it on to the right person. I'd love to get into a few gems or stones. One, the natural pearls. I mean, I find this so fascinating. There are not many. Are natural pearls still being harvested today?
They are, but the really good, proper astrological quality ones where they're round, like you want a pearl to be as close to the full moon as possible. So as round, as white, as lustrous as possible. These are really, really, really hard to find. My understanding is that there are a lot of natural pearls that are still available on the market, but they're very malformed.
Right.
They have very poor quality luster. They're kind of creepy looking. Sometimes they remind me of teeth, like molars or something like that, which is, pearl is calcium carbonate, just like our teeth, so
Right.
there is kind of a similarity there. And we don't find that those have much astrological power at all. So most of the natural pearls that we get, when we're able to get them, actually come from estate collections. People whose late fathers were pearl divers, and they have a very limited collection. Maybe once a year are allowed into the vault to pull out a few, and then that's how we get them. But yes, they are virtually extinct in
How
proper
many
astrological quality.
how many pearls do these ex-divers, or I can imagine like the Victorian royalty or whatever, I don't know, how many pearls do they have in their vaults? What are we
Boy,
talking
I'm
about
sure, I'm sure
numbers
it
that are around
depends.
here? Like
I'm
how many
sure
are
it
you
depends.
getting? How
Yeah.
many do you get per year? Like, do you acquire pearls
Our sources, our primary sources, we have two or three. I would say between hundreds and thousands,
per year?
but they're total in their vaults.
Right,
And then I
right,
think
right,
they're allowed to take out, some small percentage of that every year. But it's a
right.
finite amount. So there's sort of this understanding that it has to be treated with care because once they're
Mm.
gone, they're gone. And even of those super fine ones, a very small percentage are acceptable for us. They often have really big dimples in them where they were harvested. So we're really trying to get ones that don't have any significant flaws on them. And it is hard. So we've been experimenting with some different options. There's something called Keshi pearls. And Keshis are a byproduct of the cultured pearl process. So, in a cultured pearl, you're inserting something into an oyster. It creates an irritation in that oyster, so it secretes nacre, which is the pearl material, around that thing you inserted. And that's how you culture a pearl. You kind of force it. But the inside of that pearl is whatever thing you inserted. It's not pure pearl material. But now and then you just get a little accidental pearl
Mm.
inside of that oyster. It's like a bonus pearl that
Wow.
didn't have any central nucleus. And sometimes you can find those in really good quality. So those are keshis. So we do have several of those. Most keshis are very funny shapes. Often like grains of rice or things like that. But when you find a good
Mm.
round one, it's
Wow.
basically like a natural pearl. It's just happenstance. It just happened on
Right.
its own.
I love that. So how much do you guys sell like a keshi for, and how much do you sell the natural pearls for? Approximately, just so people get an idea.
The natural pearls are going to start 1,500 to 2,000 US dollars and go up from there. The Keshi pearls are like 400 to 500 US dollars, but we sold out of them so quickly when we discovered them. So we're currently trying to find more that satisfy our quality criteria. And then there's something called tissue nucleated pearls, and this is our most common substitute. And a tissue nucleated pearl, they just insert a little tiny bit of oyster mantle tissue, like the fleshy stuff inside, and that eventually dissolves. So you've got
Mm.
pure pearl material. If you were to saw it in half, it would just look like pure pearl, just like a natural pearl. So it's the only type of cultured pearl out there that works for astrology. And these are also
Ah,
super, super rare.
really?
But we were fortunate to have just found a supply of them. We found like 60. So we're really excited to have those. We're kind of coveting them right now. And those are going to be under $1,000.
Right. And the
Mhm.
common pearls, like I'm wearing pearls from a pearl mala from
Mhm.
India. Like, I mean, I've
Mhm.
been to the shops. There's thousands and thousands of hundreds of thousands.
Mhm.
What are they, and do they have an effect?
Yes, those are the cultured pearls. So if you were to saw one of those in half and look at the inside of what's in there, it's whatever they inserted into the oyster to start the pearl formation process. It's usually mother of pearl. Sometimes it's plastic, just a little
Mm.
plastic round thing they just pop in there. But in more cases than not, it's some sort of shell material. So I would say that they have maybe 10% of the effect of a true astrological pearl. And then on top of that, when it's drilled, I think that diminishes the effect
Mm.
even further. So
Right.
it's very important if you're getting an astrological pearl, if your jeweler is setting it for you, don't let them drill into it,
No.
which a lot of people do. Keep it intact. It's going to
Yes.
keep it more energetically whole.
Yeah. I would, because I love pearl mala, and I love my pearl mala, and it's been through certain things which are very precious. But in future, I would
Mhm.
get the clamping style. So without needing to drill, you kind of clamp each end with some silver or gold, and then you connect a chain and continue. So for those who want
Mhm.
a pearl mala or pearl necklace, you can do it that way instead of drilling holes.
Mhm.
Another gem I'd like to go into, which is probably the most common crystal out there, amethyst. You've got one behind you. I've got two in my house next to me. So many people have an amethyst. How can people harness the energy, the Saturn energy from amethyst? And is there even energy available? Of course, there's energy available, but how significant is the energy from your common amethyst crystal that you have? Or how can we begin to interact with amethyst in a more direct, profound astrological way?
I think that one of the wonderful things about the crystal specimens is that there is an overlay in the crystal healing world that's totally coincidental that mirrors the astrological significations. So, somebody who may have never even heard of Vedic astrology but has a crystal shop in some random city might tell you that amethyst is really good for grounding, for spiritual development. So it kind of coincides with the Saturn qualities just naturally. But I have a lot of Saturn. A lot of amethyst around here for the grounding property. And I do not find that I have any negative side effect the same way that I would with the blue sapphires. So I would describe it as a safe stone to activate significations that Saturn also shares. And a lot of people say that it's really good for the crown chakra, for alignment with the spiritual self in that way as well. I can't comment on that because I haven't experienced it, but I really notice the grounding quality of amethyst. It just brings me deep into my body, keeps me centered. And given the work that I do all the time, I'm working with all these energetic frequencies. I've got one behind me here. I've got a massive 60-pound amethyst specimen on the other side of my office. So I find it incredibly helpful. And to answer your question about how to work with it, I find that most gems and most crystals even respond really well to intention. So, as funny as it sounds, they do have a unique form of consciousness. And if you have a particular goal for a stone that stone automatically kind of supports anyway, you can ask the stone to help with that. So it's like, hey, Mr. 60-pound amethyst specimen in the corner of my office. I'm having a really frazzled day. Like, help me out. Like, bring your
Mm.
presence into this office and bring us back to center, please, so I can get the rest of my work done. And I notice a difference.
Mm.
So you can play around with that. I really encourage self referral. I think that so many of us have antennas and sensors for this built in. It's just a matter of trusting ourselves and practicing with it to master it.
Beautiful. I'd love to hear briefly some of the gems or crystals or stones that you are cognizing and you're doing your own research that aren't classically recommended in Jyotish. You once recommended to me an aquamarine for my Aquarius zodiac. That's one example, which I was very charmed to try at the time, and maybe I'll talk about it with you to continue that charm. As only recently, perhaps it's since hearing your your interview with Swati the other day during a summit that you did. I am re-inspired to get back into some gems, but yes, give us some of these ones that people that you found effective that are not that people
Yeah.
may not know about.
Sure. Yeah. No, I love that you brought up aquamarine. That one, I had just this intuitive pull for a while that it might be the primary gemstone, as you mentioned, for Aquarius ascendant. Traditionally, blue sapphire is recommended for Aquarius. Saturn in Jyotish rules over the Aquarius first house and also the 12th house. The 12th house has a pull out of the material world. It's a very spiritual house. It's a house of isolation, seclusion, liberation. It's kind of a heavy house. And a lot of people, as Aquarian ascendants, who wear these blue sapphires, thinking it's going to strengthen their primary house of self, get this 12th house pull because
Mm.
Saturn actually predominantly rules over the 12th house for them. So aquamarine resonates more with the Aquarian nature of Saturn,
Mm.
which is very different than the Capricorn nature of Saturn. Aquarian has to do with like the Aquarian age, humanitarianism, innovation, originality, change, evolution, community. And so aquamarine tends to activate more of those Aquarian qualities. So I invested in some astrological, in my opinion, quality aquamarine. It's very hard to find it unheated. Most of it's heat treated. Found a few pieces, tested them on myself, of course. And again, even though I'm not supposed to wear blue sapphire, I asked this aquamarine. I had actually just gotten back from the Tucson Gem Show. It's a big buying trip in America. It's in the winter. It's in the desert, but I flew back to where I live in a state called Iowa. And it was late at night when I flew back from the show. I had just gotten this aquamarine, and there was crazy snowstorms, crazy ice storms. I was in whiteout conditions driving at 11 o'clock at night,
Wow.
and realized I was on solid ice and I was in this construction zone. These bridges were being built off the freeway. I could not see anything. And in that moment, I knew that I could not slow down, or I would probably just peel off. I was in this really high stakes situation, and I had this aquamarine in my purse that was sitting on my lap, and I said, "Hey, I need you right now." And I had this thought, it's Saturn. Like, this could be making things
Mm.
worse. I'm like, no, like, we're going to transcend the fear right now because this is a kind of a survival situation. And I said, I need your help. I'm getting goosebumps talking about this story.
Mm.
I said, I need your help with clarity right now. And I just got this whole high level, this stone just came to life, and it was like, I got you. And something just took over, this coherence. That's probably the best word for it, was coherence. And I just somehow managed to keep my vehicle moving on solid ice, whiteout, can't see, through this massive construction, windy cones, barely it was insane. And I got through it, and it was just this clarity took over that got me there, and I knew it was the stone. And I wound up talking to an Aquarius astrologer friend about it the next day. And he was like, "Can I try it? Can I have it?" I'm like, "Yes." So I sent it to him as a fellow Aquarius. And he was a uh, acupuncturist at the time. So he took this aquamarine off of me. I do believe I got it for him in the grand karmic scheme of things. That stone kind of saved me coming home. And then I sent it
Wow.
to him. And he had the most transcendental experiences over the next several months. He's now a well known astrologer. He's completely moved into the field of the esoteric. He's very well known in this particular field, and he attributes all of it to this particular aquamarine.
Wow.
So it really activated his first house of self,
Mm.
the way that we would want it to. So we love these little success stories, and I've since been recommending it for various Aquarian ascendants who are reporting the exact same thing, just really uplifting in a way that blue sapphire, which is kind of more a deeper, heavier stone, doesn't do. So there's these nuances here. Savarite garnet is a green stone that is not commonly worn for emerald. I've tried emerald. I have some side effects. It's not really meant for my chart. But Savarite garnet is something that's activating the Mercurian side of clarity, communication, business success. And I also believe that it really opens the heart chakra. They say that's kind of a green area. So I've had really great increase in communication ability. I'm able to communicate a lot clearer, even if I'm flustered. I tend to shut down when I'm flustered. That's allowed me to really just be even and get my points across when I need to. But I only wear that one part time because it causes me to overthink. It's like the hamster wheel just goes nonstop if I'm not careful. So that's if I need it for that communication clarity, I put it on without any side effects of emerald. And Rubellite, which is a pink tourmaline, that's one that is not commonly used to strengthen the sun. Ruby is the primary stone for the sun, but I've had incredible results with that one as well. And I do believe that there are stones like Rubellite that have these wonderful properties in the crystal healing world. We were touching on this with amethyst. There's different sciences and how you can work with these things. And so when we find an overlay with certain stones, you get the best of both worlds. And
Mm.
Rubellite is said to be another heart expander, and that's really been my experience with it, in addition to having these sun strengthening qualities as well.
Mm.
So I'm a guinea pig to the best of my ability. I will try anything and let you guys know how it works, but I figured that's the only way that we can continue to learn and expand upon this knowledge.
Thank you. Are you putting these on your fingers as rings? These,
Yes, I
yeah.
wear my Savarite garnet on the pinky finger, on the Mercury
Mm.
finger,
Right.
to make sure I get that particular Mercurian quality. So, yeah, I do my best. With that aquamarine, I myself did not, I just had it on my body. I didn't get it set
Yes.
into jewelry. It was a very large stone. That
That
particular now astrologer wears it as a pendant,
right. That's
which
what I'm
also
thinking.
works.
These stones are probably like much cheaper. I don't know. They're probably not considered precious, so they would be larger, right? And
Yes,
probably not going to want to
yes.
wear them as a ring. But then, yeah, like I feel the ring is so much more direct in its effect than a pendant.
Yeah, the secondary stones as pendants, I think you could hypothesize that they have a more general effect on
Mm.
the physiology. Whereas when you wear it on the corresponding finger, you can target it a little
Yeah.
bit more and you can get your intentions a little bit more dialed in, especially if you're working with a primary gemstone that's only 1 or 2 carats in size. I do like to see it worn on the finger instead of a pendant, because it's this little tiny concentrated pocket of energy and it's amplified having it on the correct finger.
Mm.
So that, but you can also bend the rules a little bit with that. We were just talking about Mercury stones being on the pinky finger. That can be a very awkward place for people to wear a very expensive gemstone. It's subject to a lot of impact. You're slamming your hand on things. So a lot of our customers will put the emerald on the ring finger or the middle finger, which has secondary Saturn energy to it, and still get good results. So I would exercise intuitive
Mm.
discretion with that.
Mm.
And often I tell people who are trying to decide where to put it, which hand, there are rules, there's guidelines, I guess I should say, for this stuff. But oftentimes I suggest to people, look at your hand and tell me, where do you see the stone? Like,
Mm.
where do you see your future ring? And people often really do see it in their mind's eye on a particular finger, quite strongly. And I always encourage that, because I think
Right.
that we are essentially fulfilling some sort of karmic destiny. So it's okay
Mm.
to listen to that.
Awesome. I have a couple questions from our audience and listeners. We asked on Instagram some questions in advance, and one of them is for those studying the. There's actually quite a few jewelers who are interested in studying Vedic gemology because they're into Jyotish and they kind of want to move into that niche area. What would you recommend for someone who wants to study and be able, like you, to read a stone and see its quality and get into that?
Sure. Exposure is really important. But I would recommend before somebody starts prescribing gems to other people, especially clients off the street, try them on yourself first so that you can better speak to the results that they will have. And then, I have come before some of the newcomers, and I'm a wealth of information. You can go to my blog. I have a kind of cheat sheet article on astrologicalgemblog.com. The title is The Best Gems for Every Vedic Rising Sign.
Mm.
Just Google that and find it, and that's going to really narrow it down to what's going to work in probably 90% of cases.
Mhm.
And I include a little bit of context there too. So it's because there's some kind of general rules you can follow. In most cases, you can wear gemstones for the rulers of the first, fifth, and ninth houses in astrology. They're considered the most auspicious, but there are exceptions. So I do explain on that particular article just the real basics of how to recommend a gemstone, and that will get people headed in the right direction in a vast majority of cases.
Yeah, that is quite complex. Like that requires a lot of studying. What I was more referring to was from a jeweler's perspective of how they can find quality gems and use gems. Like, how can they learn to read a gem and tell the quality and look at the flawless amount? This is for the jewelers, not
I
not
see what you're
not
saying.
recommending for Jyotish, but just
Read a
those who,
gem.
yeah, because we have so many
Yes.
Jyotishis in our communities that are recommending gems, but not a lot of gem, a lot of good sources for gems. So people want the quality, but they don't have the capacity to read a gem.
Yes. So this is kind of more of a gemological
Right,
question,
exactly.
how to assess a gemstone for its astrological properties. And that requires training in a
Yeah.
vast majority of cases. Fortunately, most precious gemstones can be certified by a lab. So if somebody's ever in doubt about a particular stone, buy it with a laboratory certification or send it out for a laboratory certification. Ideally, don't buy the gem if you're on the fence because it's a big investment. But for jewelers that are maybe looking to source stones and want to make sure they're astrological quality, that's probably my best piece of advice. Just get one that's certified, and that's
Mm.
gonna eliminate at least the treatment component, and then the practice of looking at it under high levels of magnification. There are jewelers' loops. Presumably, they've already got the equipment for that. We really like loops that are illuminated, so there's light coming through the magnification as well. That's going to reflect certain inclusions. But really, it's just practice in context. And ideally, if you don't have a gemological degree, work with somebody who
Right.
does to give you a
So,
second
so
opinion.
are the certifications enough? I mean, I've just experienced so much adulteration in India with herbs and food, and they all have certifications, and it doesn't mean shit.
Has to do with the lab. That's for sure.
Right. Right.
There's a lot. In fact, there was a lot of corruption. Maybe I'm not sure about this. There may have been a lot of corruption with GIA, the
Right.
laboratory in India. People were paying them off to certify things, that
And
may have not
GIA is an
been.
international. It has laboratories all around the world for diamonds only.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, they do colored stones as well. In the United States, it's totally reliable. So there are reputable labs.
Okay.
So I think it's just a
Right.
matter of making sure that the laboratory certification comes from one of the labs that can be trusted. Because it's true, you can go on eBay if you have that there. You probably do, and get a laboratory certified unheated natural yellow sapphire for $35, and it's just an AI generated certificate.
Right.
So it's important to exercise critical
Yeah,
thinking with all
sure.
of this stuff. Yeah.
Thank you. So, if people want to get in contact with you, what do you offer? Because from memory, you offer like free. Um, what do you offer? There is some free services, I think. Is that
If anybody kind of just wants a quick assessment, like for the gemstone that they should wear, you can contact me and I'll just for free let you know what's good for you and what you should stay away from. I do offer a comprehensive written consultation for $108, and that's credited back if you buy a gemstone from us. That's if you wanted a more detailed explanation of what a gemstone is going to do for you, which I think if somebody is really prepared to make the investment, it's a good idea to get that consultation, because when you've got very specific results predicted, you can track it over time. And the reason that I do it in writing is so that you've got it on file what the gemstone should do, and then 5 years down the road you can check that recommendation and see if all of that came true. So that's something that we do. And then, we're happy to give special prices to anybody listening to the podcast. We can even make coupon codes or discount codes for you if you want.
yeah?
So
In the
we're super flexible.
Thank you, Tiffany. Yeah, in the past, for the Vital Veda community, if you get a gem from Tiffany, an astrological gem, if you just mention Vital Veda, they will give you a discount very
Yes,
generously. So thank you for that. And
absolutely.
my last question is, how do you and your company deal with the karma of selling gems? Because there is, in terms of the monetary exchange, because especially in Jyotish, there's a lot of Jyotishis, respectable Jyotishis that I know that
Mhm.
also in Ayurveda, but to an increasing degree in Jyotish, that allocate certain amounts of money, if not all of it, to not themselves but other things. How do you deal with it?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's a great question. And we have encountered a little bit of backlash in the astrological community over the years. In a lot of the astrological conferences, I've really wanted to speak about the appropriate way to recommend gemstones. And people are hesitant to let me in certain circles because we also sell the gems. They worry there's a conflict of interest. And there's even a lot of spiritual people that have this funny relationship with money where they're concerned about the business element being a component of a spiritual tool. But I'm of the opinion that money is a wonderful thing. We recommend gemstones often to help people with wealth and abundance. Abundance is an incredible frequency in the universe. There's profit, which is questionable. There's capitalism, which is questionable. There's exploitation of natural resources, which is questionable. We do our best to source gems from the most fair trade suppliers that we can, while still acknowledging the fact that the earth is very generously offering us stones that we have to mine. But we're careful. We stay away from things like blood diamonds. So we try to minimize the violence there. Our profit margins are considerably lower than they are with retail establishments. We're really just trying to get people what they need. We're very generous. We're very transparent. So ethics in Vedic gemology is something that I actually talk about quite a bit. I've got articles on that as well. Um, so there is kind of the fact that we do have to sell them. We have to keep our lights on, but we
Sure.
do our best to be as mindful of that as possible. I'm not sure if that quite answered your question, but
Yeah,
hopefully it was in the ballpark.
yeah. I mean, do you do anything like, would you get
Mhm.
yajnas done for your company to create balance or donate something? That's what
We
a lot
have
of Jyotish.
donated to black dog sanctuaries. That was a big one for Saturn. Saturn is black dogs. Um,
Nice.
so yeah, we did that
Very
for a while,
nice.
especially with like our iron rings. We had this funny thing where we
Oh,
felt like we didn't want to take money for iron rings. So all
right,
of that
right,
that came in, we were donating to black dog
right, right,
sanctuaries. So
right.
we play with that a little bit, and we do a lot of yagyas, not only for the business but for anybody that happens to by gems for us. So it's kind of like this planetary thing. Like, may we be taken care of, and may we get the
Mm.
gems that people need to them. May they be taken care of with this. We have actually Yagi is going, I think, with every single day for at least the past 10 years, just to,
Right.
kind of make sure that
Yes.
we're all in alignment and in
Right.
the highest possible order that we can
Yeah.
be.
That is super helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tiffany. So to
Yeah.
astrologicalgem.org is the website.
.com.
Dot .com. Okay, astrologicalgem.com. Can
Mhm.
they book a session with you there? Whether it's
Sure.
the paid one
Yes.
or the great.
Yes.
Cool.
Mhm.
Anything else to say? Otherwise,
No, just
Tiffany,
that it's
you
an
ready?
absolute honor to speak with you, and it's always so much fun to share this information. And I hope it makes sense to people and is exciting for them. And yeah, please feel free to check out astrologicalgem.com. Astrologicalgemblog.com is where the
Right.
articles are. And Tiffany April Rains, that's my name on YouTube. I'm just starting a
Right.
series on Vedic Gemology,
Right.
so I'll be dedicating as much time as I can to creating a library of knowledge about all of the different gems, the zodiac signs, what's best for people. Anything I know, I would like to just get out there in the world. There's no gatekeeping with this information.
Right.
I believe everybody should know it.
That's so valuable and so important to do your research and become acquainted with the knowledge before you're purchasing this significant purchase. So
It's critical.
thanks, Tiffany. I'm excited to pause this. And if you've got a moment, we can talk about my stones and my chart.
Let's talk about it.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. If you could do one thing to support this show, support me and our guests and the energy and the Shakti for this show to continue, please subscribe. If you are not already subscribed, you will be notified when we release episodes, as we intend for it to be regular, but it's not always. But that would mean so much to me. This show has been going since 2018, and it needs the Shakti. It really needs the reciprocal energy from you as a listener. So that's all I ask for you to do is subscribe. If you'd like to learn about similar aspects of this knowledge, check out episode 28 with Jay Boyle. I highly recommend it. It's incredible. We go specific into each stone and what they're for and more about the stones individually. Episode 28 of Vedic Astrological Gems with Jay Boyle, the most experienced gemstone buyer in the world. And there are a bunch of episodes on Jyotish Vedic Astrology. We have some with Blaine Watson, some with Laura Plum, some with Purnesh. So check them out. And thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it. And again, if you want a discount of about astrological gems and you want some of the best gems in the world, you know who to reach out to. Speak to Tiffany, astrologicalgems.com.